I remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid of death. It wasn't in a hospital bed. It wasn't surrounded by family holding my hand, whispering prayers. It happened on Interstate 40 doing 70 miles per hour when a semi-truck jackknifed across 3 lanes and my motorcycle became nothing more than twisted metal and broken promises. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 28 now. When this happened, I was 23, and I was the kind of person who laughed at heaven, rolled my eyes at near-death experience stories on YouTube, and believed that consciousness was just electrical impulses that stopped when your brain stopped. I was a physics major. I dealt in measurements, calculations, things I could prove. That certainty lasted exactly until 3:47 p.m. on August 14th, when my heart stopped beating for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The before. 3 weeks before the accident, I'd started having these dreams. Not nightmares, nothing scary, just this recurring image of standing at a crossroads. 7 paths stretched out in front of me, each one glowing a different color. In the dream, I could never choose which path to take. I'd just stand there, paralyzed, while a voice I couldn't quite hear tried to tell me something important. I told my girlfriend Sarah about it over breakfast one morning. She was into all that metaphysical stuff, tarot cards, meditation, crystals. I loved her anyway. "It's your subconscious processing a decision," she said, not looking up from her phone. "You've been stressed about grad school." "I'm not stressed about grad school." "Then maybe it's about us." That should have been my first clue that the universe was trying to get my attention, but I was too logical for signs, too smart for symbols. The morning of August 14th started normal. Coffee, toast, a kiss goodbye that I didn't know might be our last. I threw my leg over my Yamaha, a beautiful machine I'd spent 2 years restoring, and headed toward campus for a late afternoon meeting with my thesis advisor. I never made it. The rupture. The weird thing about traumatic accidents is how time behaves. Scientists call it tachypsychia, the brain's way of processing high-stress situations by seeming to slow everything down. But what I experienced went beyond that. I saw the truck's trailer swing wide, saw the other cars scattering like startled birds. In that stretched-out moment, my brain did something unexpected. It stopped calculating my odds of survival and started showing me a highlight reel. My 6th birthday. Dad teaching me to ride a bike. Sarah laughing at something stupid I'd said. My mom's face when I graduated summa cum laude. But here's what was strange. These weren't just memories. I was inside them again, feeling every emotion with impossible clarity, understanding things about those moments I'd never understood before. Then the impact. The physics of it would have fascinated me under different circumstances. The force. The momentum transfer, the way my body became a projectile following Newton's laws with absolute precision. But physics couldn't explain what happened next, the separation. There's no poetic way to describe the sensation of your consciousness separating from your body. The spiritual people call it soul, leaving flesh. The neuroscientists call it dissociative hallucination triggered by oxygen deprivation. I call it the most real thing that ever happened to me. One moment, I was Marcus in pain, Marcus in shock, Marcus whose body was broken. The next moment, I was Marcus who could see everything. I was above the highway. Not metaphorically, literally above it, maybe 30 feet up, watching the scene with a clarity that shouldn't have been possible. I could see my body on the asphalt, twisted in ways bodies shouldn't twist. I could see the truck driver stumbling out of his cab, his face white with horror. I could see other drivers pulling over, someone already on their phone calling 911. But I could also see things I shouldn't have been able to see. I could see into the truck driver's mind. His name was Robert. His daughter had just started kindergarten, and he was going to carry this guilt for the rest of his life, even though the brake failure wasn't his fault. I could see the woman in the Honda who stopped to help. She was a surgical nurse, and this was going to change her career path in ways she couldn't imagine yet. I could see the threads. That's the only way I can describe it. Thin, golden threads connecting every person, every moment, every decision. The truck driver's choice to take Highway 40 instead of the 15. My decision to leave campus 10 minutes early. Sarah's great-grandfather's immigration from Poland that eventually led to her and me meeting at a college party. The threads went back and back and back, weaving together into patterns so complex and beautiful that my physics brain couldn't even begin to calculate them. And then I saw the paramedics arrive. The choice. I watched them work on my body with detached interest. Chest compressions, defibrillator. The younger paramedic, his name was James, I somehow knew, was thinking about his student loans while he tried to restart my heart. The older one, Martinez, was praying under her breath in Spanish. "We're losing him," James said. I wanted to tell them it was okay, that I was fine. Better than fine, actually. This floating, seeing, knowing state felt more natural than being trapped in flesh and bone had ever felt. But then something shifted. The golden threads that connected everything suddenly brightened, and down one particular thread, the thickest one, pulsing with a light that was almost alive, I felt something pulling me. Not back to my body, forward, toward something I couldn't see yet, but could feel with absolute certainty. Some people who've had near-death experiences describe seeing a tunnel, a light, deceased relatives waiting. For me, it was simpler and stranger. It was like reality itself opened a door I'd never known existed, and on the other side was an answer to a question I'd been asking my entire life without knowing I was asking it. The question was, why? Why physics? Why consciousness? Why does anything exist instead of nothing? Why does the universe seem to be made of mathematics? Why do we suffer? Why do we love? Why are we here? I moved toward that door. Below me, Martinez shocked my body again. "Come on," she whispered. "Come back." I had a choice to make. And in that moment, suspended between the world I'd left and the world I was approaching, I finally understood what those dreams about the crossroads had been trying to tell me. This wasn't about grad school. This wasn't about Sarah. This was the real choice, the only choice that ever actually mattered. Stay or go, return or transcend, wake up or wake up. The door opened wider, and I stepped through. The first thing that struck me wasn't the light. Everyone talks about the light. It was the silence. Not absence of sound. True silence. The kind that exists before sound was ever invented. The kind that holds all possible sounds within it. Waiting. And within that silence, I heard everything. I heard the formation of galaxies, the first cell dividing, Sarah's heartbeat when she slept, my mother's prayers, the truck driver's daughter singing in her kindergarten class at that exact moment. Not as separate events, as one continuous symphony, all happening simultaneously, all connected by those golden threads I'd seen from above the highway. The door I'd stepped through wasn't a door at all. It was a threshold between dimensions, and crossing it was like remembering something I'd deliberately forgotten. The presence. I wasn't alone. There was a being. No, being is too small a word. A consciousness. An intelligence so vast that calling it God felt like calling the ocean wet, technically accurate but completely missing the point. It didn't have a form, but my mind tried to give it one anyway. For a moment, it looked like my grandfather who'd passed when I was 8. Then like a geometric pattern of impossible complexity. Then like pure light. Then like nothing and everything at once. When it communicated, it wasn't through words. It was through knowing. And the first thing I knew was this. "Marcus, you're right on time." Right on time? I'd just been in a catastrophic accident. My body was probably dying on a highway. How was that on time? The answer came not as explanation, but as experience. The life review. Suddenly, I was Marcus at age 7, standing in the school cafeteria, watching Tommy Henderson sit alone. In my original memory, I'd walked past him to sit with the popular kids. I'd wanted to fit in. But now I wasn't just watching that moment. I was inside it from every angle. I felt what 7-year-old Marcus felt. The desire to belong, the fear of being different, the small cruelty of that choice. But then the perspective shifted, and I felt what Tommy felt. The crushing loneliness. The hope each time someone walked by with their tray. The small death of that hope when they kept walking. The specific pain of seeing Marcus, who'd been kind to him the week before, choose the cool kids instead. I felt Tommy's mother's worry when he came home sad again. I felt his father's helplessness. I felt his younger sister's confusion about why her brother was so quiet at dinner. One small choice, walking past a lonely kid, and I experienced every ripple it had created. "Oh God," I said, though I had no mouth to speak with. "I didn't know." "You couldn't have known," came the response. "But now you do." The review continued. Not chronologically, not in any order that made linear sense. Moments of kindness and cruelty, courage and cowardice, love and indifference all tumbling through me like water through a sieve. The time I'd helped an elderly woman carry groceries, I felt her relief, her gratitude, and how that small act had restored her faith in young people enough to smile at a troubled teenager the next day, which had stopped him from doing something terrible. One choice, cascading forward. The time I'd cheated on a physics exam, I felt the professor's disappointment, not in my cheating, but in my lack of trust in myself. I felt how that moment had fractured something in my own integrity that took years to repair. But here's what shattered me. I felt Sarah's love for me, not my interpretation of it, not my insecure questioning of whether it was real. The actual, pure, unconditional love she held for me, so much bigger and more patient than I'd ever understood. "I took it for granted," I said. "Most do," the presence communicated. "That's part of learning." The revelation. When the life review ended, or paused, I couldn't tell which, the presence drew my attention to something I can only describe as the grid. Imagine if you could see the source code of reality. Not the physical laws, those are just the interface. I mean the actual programming underneath, the mathematical poetry that writes itself into existence. The grid wasn't made of matter or energy, it was made of relationship. Every point connected to every other point, not through space, but through meaning, through resonance, through love in its truest form, not emotion, but the fundamental force that holds relationship itself together. "This is what you've been trying to prove with physics," the presence communicated. "You were looking for the unified field theory. You were asking the right question. What's the answer? Connection. Everything is relationship. The universe isn't made of things. It's made of events, interactions, experiences. Consciousness isn't something the universe produces. Consciousness is what the universe is." I watched as the grid pulsed with light, and I understood. Every thought I'd ever had, every choice, every moment of awareness. They weren't isolated events in my skull. They were ripples in this field of consciousness that is reality itself. So we're all connected. You're not connected. Connection implies separation first. You're all expressions of the same singular awareness, experiencing itself through infinite perspectives. Then why don't we remember this? The forgetting is part of the design. How could you experience separation, difference, contrast? How could you learn compassion, forgiveness, courage, if you knew you were playing every role in every drama? The game requires temporary amnesia. It's a game. It's an artwork, an evolutionary process, a love story the universe is telling itself. Call it what helps you understand. I looked at the grid, at the infinite complexity of it, at the patterns within patterns within patterns, and I saw something that made my physicist heart sing. It was elegant. Perfectly, impossibly elegant. Every tragedy, every triumph, every mundane moment, all of it fitting together into a design so beautiful that I wept. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you asked. Every person who crosses this threshold asked in some way to see behind the curtain. Most forget they asked. You won't." "Am I dead?" "You're at a decision point. You can continue forward. There's so much more to show you, or you can return." "Why would I return?" The presence showed me Sarah sitting in a hospital waiting room, her face in her hands. It showed me my mother receiving the phone call. It showed me the students I would teach, the research I would publish, the daughter I would have in 7 years who would become a doctor and heal thousands. It showed me Tommy Henderson, now 38, reading my future book about this experience, and finally understanding that he wasn't alone in his suffering. "If I go back, will I remember this?" "Enough! You'll remember enough!" I looked at the grid one more time, trying to memorize its pattern, knowing even as I tried that memory couldn't hold something infinite. "I'm not ready to leave," I said. "No one ever is," the presence replied, and I felt something like cosmic amusement. "That's how you know it's real." "I want to stay." The words came from somewhere deep, primal. The part of me that had spent 23 years confined to a body, to linear time, to the illusion of separation. That part was ready to be done, to dissolve into the grid, to finally rest in the truth I'd just discovered. "You will," the presence communicated. "Eventually, but not today." "Why not? You showed me that death isn't real, that this—" I gestured at the infinite expanse of consciousness around me. "This is what's real. Why would I go back to forgetting?" "Because remembering and then choosing to return is different than never leaving at all. The courage isn't in staying here, Marcus. The courage is in going back." I felt anger then, actual anger, which surprised me. Anger was such a small human emotion, and I thought I'd transcended all that. But here it was, sharp and real. "You're sending me back to suffer, to forget this, to live in a world where people hurt each other because they don't understand we're all the same consciousness. How is that courageous? How is that fair?" The presence didn't respond with words. Instead, it showed me. I saw a thread in the grid, my thread, extending forward from this moment. If I stayed, the thread simply dissolved back into the infinite pattern. Beautiful, peaceful, complete. But if I returned? I saw the hospital room where Sarah would visit every day for 2 weeks while I recovered. I saw the moment she'd say yes when I finally asked her to marry me. I saw our daughter Zoe, born with her mother's eyes and my stubborn curiosity. I saw the physics paper I'd published that would bridge quantum mechanics and consciousness studies in a way that would make other scientists start asking different questions. I saw the book. I saw thousands of people reading it, and in reading it, feeling less alone. I saw Tommy Henderson reading it in a hotel room, his hand on a bottle of pills, deciding not to take them. One thread, millions of connections, infinite ripples. "That's not fair," I whispered. "You're showing me what I could do. The weight of that is exactly the weight everyone carries. Every choice matters. Every life touches countless others. You're not special in carrying this burden, Marcus. You're only special in knowing you carry it. I don't want to forget what I've seen here." "You won't forget. It will fade, like a dream fades, but the truth of it will stay in your bones. You'll doubt it sometimes. You'll wonder if it was hallucination, oxygen deprivation, neural misfiring. But in the quiet moments, you'll know." I looked one last time at the grid, at the pattern of everything, trying to burn it into whatever passed for memory in this place. "Will I see you again?" "You never stopped seeing me. You just forgot how to look." And then, without warning, without preparation, I felt the pull. The re-entry. If death is like taking off a tight shoe, resurrection is like putting on a shoe made of broken glass. The first sensation was pain, not localized, but everywhere, all at once. Every nerve ending in my body screaming in protest. Ribs cracked, skull fractured, internal bleeding, road rash across 70% of my skin. The body I'd left behind had been broken, and I was being shoved back into it like puzzle pieces that no longer fit. I tried to retreat back to the grid, but it was like trying to swim back up a waterfall. My lungs seized, trying to remember how to breathe. My heart stumbled, irregular, confused. And then the worst part, the confinement. Going from infinite awareness to being trapped in 6 feet of flesh and bone felt like being buried alive. I wanted to scream, but my throat wouldn't work. I wanted to die again, but my heart had other ideas. "He's back!" A voice. Martinez, the paramedic. "We've got a pulse." "No," I thought desperately. "Let me go, please." But my body had its own agenda. It wanted to live. And despite everything I'd just experienced, despite knowing that death was just a doorway, some ancient survival instinct dragged me back into the prison of flesh. I opened my eyes to fluorescent lights and concerned faces, and I wept. The aftermath. They tell me I was lucky. 4 cracked ribs, fractured collarbone, severe concussion, road rash, internal bruising, but alive. Miraculously, impossibly alive. Your heart stopped for over 4 minutes, Dr. Patel told me on day 3. Most people who survive that long have brain damage. You're talking, thinking clearly, remembering everything. It's remarkable. I didn't tell him that I remembered too much, that the problem wasn't brain damage, it was soul damage. I'd seen heaven, touched infinity, understood the meaning of existence, and now I was back in a hospital room watching cable news and eating Jell-O. Sarah visited every day. She held my hand, told me about the apartment, about how scared she'd been. She talked about our future together with such hope, such sweet, innocent hope. And all I could think was, I know how this ends. I've seen the pattern. I know the thread. And it made me feel nothing. That was the cruelest part. I'd experienced pure, unconditional love in the grid. I'd felt what Sarah felt for me in its rawest, most beautiful form. But now, back in my body, with my limited human emotional capacity, her love felt distant, muffled, like listening to music through a wall. "You seem different," she said one evening, her voice careful. "I almost died, Sarah. People change." "No, it's not that. You seem sad, like you're mourning something." She was right. I was mourning. I was mourning infinity. I was mourning the brief, beautiful moment when I'd understood everything, and now I was trapped in understanding almost nothing, remembering just enough to know what I'd lost. The integration. Depression after a near-death experience is common, though nobody talks about it. Everyone expects you to be grateful, celebrating your second chance. They don't understand that you didn't want a second chance. You wanted to stay in the place where everything made sense. My therapist, mandated by the hospital, was a kind woman named Dr. Chen. "Tell me about the experience," she said during our first session. I told her all of it, the grid, the life review, the presence, the choice to return. She nodded, taking notes, her face professionally neutral. "And how does it feel being back?" "Like I'm an astronaut trying to explain space to someone who's never left their house. Like I'm homesick for a place I can't return to until I die. Like I know a secret that would change everything, but speaking it out loud makes it sound like delusion." Do you think it was delusion, hallucination? I'd asked myself that 1,000 times. The rational part of my brain, the physics major, the scientist, had a dozen explanations. DMT released by the dying brain. Oxygen deprivation, neurological misfiring, the mind's last desperate attempt to create meaning in the face of annihilation. But I'd felt Tommy Henderson's loneliness. I'd seen the grid. I'd touched something that my education had no framework for. "I don't know what it was," I said finally, "but I know it changed me, and I can't unknow what I learned." "Which was?" "That we're all connected, that every choice ripples outward, that consciousness isn't produced by the brain, it's what we are, that death is just changing channels, not turning off the TV." Dr. Chen set down her pen. "Marcus, whether that experience was metaphysically real or a neurological event doesn't actually matter for your healing. What matters is what you do with it. The acceptance." It took 6 months before I could sleep through the night without waking up crying. 8 months before I could feel joy again, real joy, not just the memory of it. A year before I proposed to Sarah, knowing that our love story would have pain and beauty in equal measure, and choosing it anyway. 18 months before I started writing about the experience. The book took 3 years to complete. I interviewed neuroscientists, spiritual teachers, physicists, and dozens of people who'd had their own near-death experiences. I tried to build a bridge between the scientific and the mystical, knowing it would satisfy neither camp completely. But that wasn't the point. The point was Tommy Henderson's email, 2 weeks after publication. "I was going to end my journey tonight. I had everything planned. Then I saw your book at the library. I read the part about the life review, about how you felt my loneliness from 4th grade. I'm 41 now, and I've carried that loneliness my whole life, thinking nobody noticed, nobody cared. You noticed, and if we're really all connected like you say, then maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. I'm going to call my sister tomorrow. Thank you for coming back." I read that email 17 times and finally understood what the presence had meant. The courage wasn't in staying in the light. The courage was in returning to the darkness and bringing back even a small spark. The message. I'm 34 now. I teach physics at a university, work on consciousness studies, and raise my daughter Zoe with Sarah. The memory of the grid has faded, just like the present said it would. Some days I wonder if I imagined the whole thing. But then I'll see a random act of kindness, a stranger helping someone carry groceries, a student staying late to help a struggling classmate, and I'll catch a glimpse of the golden threads connecting everything, just for a moment, just enough to remember. If you're watching this, if you've stayed with my story this far, here's what I need you to know. You are not a random accident in an indifferent universe. You are an essential thread in a pattern so vast and beautiful that human minds can barely comprehend it. Every choice you make sends ripples through the grid. Every kindness matters. Every cruelty echoes. You are more connected, more loved, more eternal than you can possibly imagine from inside the forgetting. And yes, you will die. Your body will stop working. Your consciousness will separate from your flesh. But you won't end. You'll just transform. You'll remember what you forgot when you were born. You'll come home. Until then, you have work to do. Threads to weave, love to give, connections to honor. The accident that should have ended my life gave me a mission. Tell them the truth. Tell them they're not alone. Tell them it matters. So I'm telling you, you matter. Your life is not random. And when the time comes for your own crossing, don't be afraid. Because I've seen what's on the other side. And it's beautiful.